And welcome to SOLIDWORKS Skills video.
Very often when we're designing mechanical systems, we have existing parts. They could be motors or bearings or shafts or other assemblies, and we want to create new or custom parts that fit into it and whose shape and dimensions are not something we spell out numerically, but that they're created as relationships with those existing parts based on the specifications we want to achieve. Here we have an existing bearing in gray. I've just highlighted it. That's a part that is purchased. The part shown in green here is what we're about to create, and you'll notice that it has 4 holes in it that are aligned with the holes in the bearing, and it has an additional added boss in front with the shaft hole ready to receive another shaft. So with that in mind, let's go forward and create a new assembly that achieves this. So we will go File, New, Assembly, and the first thing we do is to bring the slide bearing into the assembly and orient it approximately as we want it so that it's ready to receive the new part. Okay, there we are. Before proceeding any further, and you'll remember this, either you remember it the easy way or the hard way, I've done both. You want to save the assembly such that it will guaranteed not change names later. Here I'm overwriting one, but I've created a simple assembly. The reason for that is that when you create a new part that it's based on an existing part, much of the context is contained within that assembly file. If you were to later rename the assembly or try to relate it to another part in another assembly, those connections would be broken or lost, and you get error messages. It's not a pretty sight. So save yourself a lot of trouble. Save the assembly right out of the gate. Now we're ready to create a new part that is in this assembly and will later become part of the machinery. So we're in Assembly, the Assembly tab. We're going, instead of inserting a component, we're going to create a new part. And the first thing it's going to want us to do is to select a reference plane upon which this part will be created. I know that I want it to sit squarely on this front surface. I will click on that. Once I do so, it is now in the new part. In fact, you can see it showing up in the tree, the feature tree. It's now called Part 1. Let's save ourselves again a little bit of trouble and give it a name that makes sense. We're going to save the part in an external file. I right-clicked. I'll do that one more time so you'll see it. I will right-click here, Save Part in External File, click on the part name, click again, and now I can call it whatever I want. I'll call it bracket 1. Okay, so now it renames it in the function, in the feature tree, and notice that I am in a sketch. That's okay. I mean, if you prefer to use some of the automation, you could exit the sketch and then go to Features and select Boss Base. For right now, it's just additional steps. So let's go ahead and create the sketch that is the beginning point for this new part. Since we're already in a sketch, we can draw a rectangle, and you'll see that as I move around, I can relate the new features, lines, circles, rectangles, whatever, with features that are in the parts, the other parts of the assembly. So I'm going to do that. I'll click in the upper left corner, drag down to the lower right corner. It snaps. You can see it snapping, and there we are with a rectangle that is tied and coincident with the existing edges of the part that's there, the bearing. So I will accept that. Well, you know what? We're nearly ready to extrude this part, but I want to add the holes. I want to make sure the holes push through. So I will go to a function called Convert Entities. You may have tried this before. Click on Convert Entities, and I will click on the edge, not the surface. I'm not going to click here. I'm going to click on the edge of each of the 4 holes one at a time. You can do multiple selections, and you'll notice that each time I click on one, it gets added to the list over here of entities to convert. So I click again and again. Now I've got all 4. Good. I'm ready to exit the sketch. You can rotate. You notice that the new lines and circles are darker. They're actually black. That's a visual clue that you've done that. I will exit the sketch. I'm not going to edit the editing of this part yet. Now that I have the sketch, in fact, if I open up the feature tree, I can see down at the bottom sketch 1, and when I hover over it, I can see the lines that it contains. Let's go ahead and create now a feature, which is an extruded boss base, and it will be based on that sketch. Notice that the feature tree is now moved out into the working area. SolidWorks does that every time. And I can expand this. I'll move down to sketch 1, and sure enough, there's sketch 1, and it shows me a preview of an extruded boss base that it would create if I clicked on OK. Currently the thickness is 0.1 inches as shown over here. I'm going to edit that to be 1/8 of an inch, 0.125. If I press enter, it will preview it, and if I click on OK, now I have that boss, the extrusion, ready to use. If I were to go back by exiting from part editing by clicking up here on the right, you would see that I do in fact have a plate, 1/8 inch thick, has holes in it. It's sitting firm flush against the back of the bearing, and it's very, very well in alignment with the outer edge and the 4 holes. So I have achieved what I hoped for so far. Now let's do a little bit more work with this. What I really want to have, as if you remember from the original drawing, in fact I can bring that up right now, the part in question has this boss out in front, so I want to do what I can to create it. Now notice that that boss is centered, vertically centered in the part, so we're going to have to achieve that somehow. Let's go back to our simple assembly. This is our new part. It's not green yet. I'm going to change the color later. And in order to continue the process of editing, I could continue to edit in context here, or I could in fact open the new part and work in its own window. Because I'm showing you how to create a part in the assembly, I will continue to edit here. So I will right click on the new part, I will go to edit part, and I'm back where I was a moment ago. The focus right now is on the new bracket, bracket 1. Let's create a reference geometry, which is a plane that bisects across the part. So let's do that right now. Go to reference geometry, plane. Now I have a few different references. The first reference, this is a shorthand that is very helpful. If I have planes that are parallel, like I do now, the top and the bottom plane, I can create a plane that bisects the two and is parallel with them by clicking first on the top plane. Not quite done yet. Now if I make my second reference the bottom plane, notice that it has created, not quite yet, it is ready to create a plane that runs through the perfect center of this part horizontally. So if I were to click on the checkbox, sure enough, there's the plane. Now you can make the plane appear any shape you want. This is not an editing function so much, but a convenience. At this point, I think I want to also turn on the visibility of planes. There's an icon here called plane visibility, and I will turn planes on. That way this plane will remain visible until I turn that off. Otherwise, if I clicked away, the plane would be hidden. So here I am with the plane. let's create a feature that is centered on that plane that has that hole. Again, going back to the other part, I want to create that boss with the hole in it. So here we go. Go back to my drawing here, and I have the working plane. Let's now create a feature which is an extruded boss base that it is living on and referenced with this plane. Now we get to do another convert entities. This time we're going to, because we want to have an extrusion that is attached to the front here, I will convert this top edge here, not the surface, but the front edge. And notice it gets into the edges to convert. I will allow it to do it, and sure enough, there appears our first line in this sketch. Let's create a circle. I don't want it to be referenced to anything quite yet. I will tell you, just as a matter of information, that I want the diameter of this circle to be 12 millimeters. So I will click on it and do my dimensioning. Now I'm working in inches. You might say, how do I create a millimeter dimension when I'm in inches? I don't really want to change my whole part to be metric. All you need to do is type in the number you want with a millimeter or mm after it, and sure enough it creates that circle. It will convert it to an inch measure, but it is in fact 12 millimeters. Now before I finish with this, we need to do a couple more things. I want to have that be a half of an inch from the front surface. So I will click on the center and the front. Right now it's dimensioned, looks like 0.53. I'm going to change it to 0.5. It moves it a little bit. We are almost done with this. The last thing I want to do is to make the hole, the circle, in terms of position, make the circle centered on the part. Right now it's offset to the left. You might think that that's difficult, but it really isn't. If I see this point right here, when I click, I'm not even clicking, when I hover over a line, it shows me the endpoints and the center. That's very handy. Let's go over to, now this is a command up here, display or delete relations. When I do a drop down, one of the options is to add a relation. So I'm going to add a relation between the center of that line and the center of the circle, and because of the orientation I have right here, they need to be horizontal. There it is. Now they're in lockstep alignment. I've got everything about that circle the way I want it. So I'll finish that. Now let's add some beef to this thing. Right now it's just a disembodied circle floating out in midair. I want to add a wall thickness. Remember, this is the hole that I want, so I want a wall around that. As before, I'll use my offset entities function. Click on the circle. Let's say for argument's sake that I want it to be an 1/8 inch wall, 0.125 again. Press enter. There's my 1/8 inch wall. As a reminder, I could have gone into the circle like that, but that's not what I want. I would click on reverse if I wanted to go the other way. So there's my 1/8 inch offset entity, and 1/8 inch, it's an 1/8 inch wall outside of that existing circle. Looks good. Now we have some lines to draw. Let's go on with that. I don't like the way that dimension looks. I'm going to move it off a little bit. There, that's better. Okay. I've mentioned on occasion that sometimes the automatic functions, the automatic snapping, is more trouble than it's worth. This is one good instance where I'm going to try my best to avoid most of the automatics, not all of them, but some of them. I'm going to draw a line. Now here I do want an automatic. I want it to start from that vertex, that point right there, and I want to go to the circle, but you see what appears are these other lines. If I wanted it to point at the center, I would go over here. If I wanted it to be tangent, I might go over here. I'm going to do the tangency on my own. generally, you might think that the automatics are great, and you're welcome to try them. Experience has shown that they don't always do what you think they're doing. So I'll click, I got one line, I'll double click to dismiss that. I'm still in line. Click again over here on this corner. Again, go over to the circle, avoid the automatics, but I do snap to the circle. So here I am, double click, I'm done with lines. Now let's add some more relations. I do want these lines tangent to the circle. So we'll add a relation. I don't think anything's selected right now. There's nothing in the selected entities. So I click on the line and the circle. We'll make them tangent. There we go. We'll accept that. I will unclick. You got to remember to unclick and get away, otherwise you may end up having things remain clicked for the next operation and end up causing trouble. So I've clicked away. We're going to do one more new relation, add relation. This time it'll be between that line and the very same circle. Tangent again on the other side. Looks good. Okay. Before I'm almost ready to extrude this feature up and down, you'll see a thing called midplane in a moment, but I have this line here. See, this is a complete circle, and I really don't want a complete circle. What I want is this area plus this area extruded. You may find that you don't have to do the following step. I find it's just cleaner and more obvious from a design intent. So I'm going to go into Trim Entities. I'm using Power Trim. Click in an open area, drag through that line, and now the outline, this closed area, is exactly what I want to extrude. So I will finish the sketch, and because I started by requesting an extruded boss base, it will automatically go forward and start to create the extrusion. Now the default extrusion is blind, which means start at the current sketch plane and go in one direction. I could reverse the direction and have it go down, but neither of those is what I really want. What I really want is a mid-plane extrusion where the plane of the sketch bisects the newly extruded material. And for argument's sake, I want to make it 0.375 thick, 0.375. There's the part that I really want, and we're darn close to having this thing be done. So I will click the checkbox to accept the extrusion. Just for argument's sake, let's now hide these planes. Okay, looks good. And let's accept this. And let's open up the part. Remember I mentioned before that you can open the part in its own window. I'm going to do that right now. So instead of saying Edit Part, I'm going to go to Open Part. Here it is, open in its own window. You can see that bisecting plane that I had created before. I'm going to change the color to match the green that I had earlier. I will right click on the top item, the bracket 1 item on the feature tree. Click on Appearances, bracket 1, and then click on the green. Here it is again. I will accept that. So now the part is green and looks exactly as I hoped. Let's go back to the assembly, the simple assembly, and sure enough, there's the part, and we'll compare that visually with the part we were trying to create, which is in the other assembly here, and other than a slight color difference, it's the same part. So I think we've achieved the mission, and now I can proceed to use that part in the working assembly.
Thank you for watching. This video is part of a series created by Neil Rosenberg and Joseph Caswell. All rights reserved.